Hi, we are Group 1 and today we make a presentation on the varieties in English pronunciation. And our presentation will have three main parts. The first one, the varieties and dialects. The second one, the RP accent. And the last one, British English and American English pronunciation.
The English language varies on regional, national, and global levels. These levels of difference are the basics for the terms dialect and variety. Dialect is an English variant that is characteristic of a particular area, community, or groups on the regional level, while variety is a variant of English which is considered standard or general English of a country. Dialect can signal the speaker's regional or social background, and variety may reveal the speaker's nationality. For instance, American English and British English are two varieties, while New York English and Southern American English are two dialects of American English. Let's move to part 8.1.2, Phonetic and Phonological Differences. Differences between accents have two main types, phonetic and phonological. When there are phonetic differences between two accents, the same set of phonemes are found in both accents, but some or all the phonemes are realized differently. For example, Australian English had the same set of phonemes and phonemic contrasts as BBC pronunciation. There may also be differences in a stress or intonation, but they do not cause a change in meaning. For instance, in American English, the word garage receives stress on the second syllable, while stress on the first syllable of garage in British English. Regardless of the stress distribution, the word garage has the same meaning in both varieties. With regards to phonological differences, the most obvious type of difference is where one accent has a different number of phonemes from another's. For instance, some accents pronounce the word holidays as holidays and other pronounce it as holidays. The prefix semi has two phonological variants, semi in British English and semi in American English.
We come to the first part. 8.2.1 The RP vowel system. The RP accent is a received pronunciation. It's constantly recognizable British accent. You can know it as Queen's English, Oxford English, and BBC English. RP is an accent, not a dialect. In other words, they avoid using non-standard grammatical constructions and localized vocabulary that are common in regional dialects. Nowadays, RP accent is often taught to students who are learning English, especially for those who learning English as a second or foreign language. This is also the accent used in most other British textbooks. And RP vowel system, vowels in near RP accents and RP consonants will be presented now. In fact, while older speakers tend to use conservative pronunciations, younger speakers tend to use advanced pronunciations. Of course, there are many differences between them, so I will present now for you. On the table, you can see there are 25 vowels, included 12 monotones, 8 diphthongs, and 5 diphthongs in the RP vowel system presented in the table. As in a number of other accents, the distinctions between or and or is now lost for very many speakers, with all become monotonized. A more recent, but not by now also widespread development is the loss of or, and the emergence of this diphthong also with or. This latter change for some speakers had affected some words, but not others, so that sure may be pronounced like shore, but poor is the same like this. The current situations with respect to this vowel is something like this. You can see on the table. There is a strong tendency, perhaps part of the same process, whereby or is stronger than or. For original diphthongs formed from I and R plus a to be pronounced as are monotones. For example, tower is stronger than ta. This process can be labeled as smoothing. Where orthographic or occurs before the voices fricatives, older speakers sometimes pronounce the vowels as or, for example, of, froth, lost. This pronunciation is currently died out in RP and being replaced by R. Words like short, fort may also pronounce with R, but often pronounced with R too by younger speakers. Conservative RP has packed vowel U in words like put, but for younger speakers, the vowel may increasingly be fronted in the direction of except before L, as in full. The diphthong O, a pot, verifies considerably ranges from O among conservative speakers to O among some advanced speakers. Perhaps the most neutral pronunciation is around O. The diphthong air, a pair, is very often monotonized to a. Words like shield may be pronounced either shoot or shield. This tendency is for middle-aged or younger speakers to omit j after sh and before u. But this tendency is much stronger in some words, for example, super students, than in others, for example, shield. What internally j tends to be retained, as in assume. There is also fluctuations after l. What internally lewd is normal, but it is possible to pronounce, for example, illusion. There is an increasing tendency for u, as in put, to be pronounced with an unround vowel, u.
The E of B rather than the I of bit occurs in the final syllable of very many in the near RP accents. In this respect, these accents resemble North American English, South African English, and Australian New Zealand English. The fronting of U towards U is more widespread than in RP. Thus, the alphone of U before a, which is not fronted in either type of accent, is in near RP markedly different from those alphones that occurs in all other environments. Unlike advanced RP, this variation of alphones with respect of all also occurs with diphthong O. The vowel I is unstressed syllables in RP often corresponds to A in near RP accents. The actual distribution of I and A varies considerably among the different near RP accents. By way of illustration, there are some near RP accents which have I in honest, village, but A in wanted, horse. In these accents, therefore, the RP distinction between roses and roses also found in many North American English accents does not occur, both forms being roses. Speakers with northern near RP accents are likely to differ from RP in one important phonological respect. Like RP, they have a contrast between a and a, as demonstrated by the following pairs: pad and part, palm and palm, match and march. However, there are two groups of words where RP has a, but northern accents have a. These are words in which RP has a, where orthographic is followed by the voicelet fricatives f, th, z, or s. For example, laugh, path, and grass. Words in which RP has a, where orthographic is followed by the nasal clusters nt, ns, nf, nd, and. For example, plant, dance, branch, demand, sample. Note that Southern English has branch as brand, Northern English brand. Some speakers from the Midlands and north of England may have local accents which like the vowel a, pot, and hurry. In such accents, words such as these have the vowels instead, with the consequence that but and put are perfect rhymes. But and put. One feature of the RP accent, which it shares with many other English accents and those of other English varieties, but is not found in North American English. Scottish English or Irish English concerns the positional allophones of the consonant L, syllable initial L, as in lots clear, for example, pronounced with the body of the tongue raised towards the hard palate, giving a front vowel resonance, which syllable final L, as in hill and syllabic L, as in bottle and dark and velarized, pronounced with the body of the tongue raised towards the stop palate, giving a back vowel resonance. Thus, L is pronounced L. L. Most English accents have lost the original and w and contrast in which, Wales, and Wales. This is for the most part true also of RP, but there are some, especially older RP speakers who still preserve it, and no one suspects this is often the result of a conscious decision and effort to do so.
According to the Bear, while there are many more variations of English, the two most commonly taught in ESL and EFL programs are American English and British English. Although no single form is considered right, there are clear preference in use. The following are the three main distinctions between Americans and British English. The following are the three main distinctions between American and British English. First of all, we got pronunciation. There are differences in vowel, consonant, stress, and intonation. And second of all, we got vocabulary. There are differences in the use or the usage of nouns and verbs, especially phrasal verb and the names of specific tools or items. And the last one is spelling. There are differences in more prefix and suffix form. And in this section, British English and American English pronunciation will be analyzed based on the basic difference in pronunciation of the two models, and there are some differences in pronouncing vowel sound and consonant sound and in using stress and intonation between American English and British English. And now we move to consonant sound. The most noticeable differences between American English and British English, according to Houdens, is how the consonant R and T and J are pronounced. The contrast and example described below and extracted and adapted from his article of American English and British English pronunciation. And now we move to consonant sounds. The most noticeable differences between American English and British English. First, silent R. The most noticeable distinction between American English and British English is the omission of the letter R. In British English, British speakers only pronounce a printed R if the R follows a vowel sound. Therefore, we don't say it in for example, like car, park, horse, further. And in American English, however, every printed R is pronounced as car, park, horse, and further. The second sound is R. So, apart from the fact that there are more R, there is also a small but significant difference in the way the R is pronounced. Like in American English, the tongue is curled further back, giving it a slightly more full quality when R is pronounced in reed and narrow, whereas in British English, the tongue is flatter and more forward. The third sound, T. When the sound T comes after stressed vowel and before a weak vowel, in American English, this sound is often made with a voice flap, similar to a very fast D, a T. Water, Saturday, letter, university. And this sound would be pronounced at a normal T in British English, like water, Saturday, letter, university. And finally, the yacht dropping. When yacht come after T, D, N, L, S, or G, like the alveolar consonants, in British English, it is omitted in American, like tune, duty, new, lewd, suit.
Next, let's move to the vowel sound. So, between British English and American English, there are 8 sounds with the distinct differences. The first one, R to R. So, in British English, they say hot, lost, sharp, want. But in American English, they say hot, lost, sharp, want. Or the second one, to ear or a. In British English, we say carry, embarrass. But in American English, we say carry, embarrass. The third one, they say in British English and in American English. For example, heard, bar, and or they say or in British English, and they say or in American English. For example, in British English, sword, fox, but in American English is sword, fox. The next one, the long R to R or A. For example, in British English, car, start. But in American English, they say car, start. And the next one is ear to R. For example, hair. But in American English, they say hair. And the 2 last one, ear to ear. For example, steer, clear. But in American English, they say steer, clear. And O to O. For example, in British English, go, note. But in American English, they say go, note. Not only the sound, but the lengths are also different. In British English, the length of the vowel sounds varies more, with some being much longer than their American counterparts. For example, heard, bar. In American, they say heard. bar. British English and American English, they are also different in stress and intonation. The first one is word stress. There are some words, especially those with the French roots, have differing accents in American English and with the first syllable stressed in American English and the last syllable in British English. For example, adult is British English, but in American English they say adult. The same to another one, ballet, brochure. The next one is the difference in the intonation. And the most noticeable difference with the English propensity to emphasize the major stress before lowering it with the strong falling intonation. But in contrast, the American English tends to have the rising tones more frequently and they rise from the main stress. And normally, the American speakers, they speak more slowly and the British speakers, they tend to make this vowel longer.
Okay, it's the end of our presentation. Thanks very much for